I say? How about approval of the agenda? Wait, has everybody read it?
So moved, Madam Chairman, to approve the agenda.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
As opposed?
Is that got to be roll call?
Yes, Mr. Four. All of our votes again will be roll call today. So if you could indicate your vote as I call your name. James Brockwell.
Aye.
Rosa Cook.
Aye.
Erica Duncan.
Aye.
Jordan Evans.
Aye.
John Ewing.
Aye.
Tom Four.
Aye.
Pam Pruitt.
Aye, aye, aye.
Dwayne Roadcap.
Aye.
There we are. Wayne Staples.
Aye.
And is Caleb Taylor on yet? Okay. The motion passed with a majority vote.
Very good then. Next item on the agenda is announcements. With that, I will defer to Ms. Lindsay.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Chair. And we, Madam Chair, sorry. We have our usual notifications with our virtual meetings. As you've seen already, we will have a roll call vote for each item. And fortunately, our director reminded me of the other thing I was going to mention is that we will be recording. So it is now being recorded. We do ask that you all maintain connection. Either visually is not mandatory, but as long as we have audio with you, we can keep going. If we get notice that there has been a disconnection or interruption in the broadcast, we will need to stop immediately at that point until we regain connection for the public. And then when we get down to our public comment, of course, we will open that up for members of the public who have signed up to join, but that will kind of give us our overview of things now that we're getting used to everything with the virtual meetings.
You think? I'll never get used to it. Okay, is that all for announcements today?
Yes, ma'am.
All right then. The next item on the agenda is approval of meeting minutes. The first is board meeting minutes from January 14, 2021. Anybody got anything out there?
Move we approve, please.
We have a motion to approve. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, then we need any discussion on the matter? Then we need to call the question via roll call.
All right. James Brockwell.
Aye.
Rosa Cook.
Aye.
Erica Duncan.
Aye.
Jordan Evans.
Aye.
John Ewing.
Aye.
Tom Four.
Aye.
Pam Pruitt.
Aye.
Dwayne Roadcap.
Aye.
Wayne Staples.
Aye.
And just to make sure he didn't pop on, Caleb Taylor.
All right then. Oh, I'm sorry.
Nope, passed with a majority vote.
All right then. The next is the Onsite Sewage Systems Professional Committee meeting minutes. We did meet March 30, 2021. I don't know if anybody wants to make discussion. The chair of that meeting is Mr. Ewing. Yeah, I called your name.
Oh, you called me. Well, yeah, I mean, we went through a lot of things, and a big thing that I have is I really think that the board could use a couple more members that know a little more specifically about Onsite. And I really had two specific kind of people in mind. One is engineer that.
I'm going to interrupt you. I think that's is that another agenda item, Ms. Lindsay, or?
Yes.
Okay. Can we defer that to later on, Mr. Ewing?
Sure. Okay.
Okay. I was just kind of looking for the overview we did as far as the OSSP committee discussed reciprocity and applications from other states and how to manage those best.
Okay. We were looking into the forms, and we had some
Right now,
good
it's just
examples.
the minutes.
What's that?
Right now, we just need to do the minutes, and then we'll do the report later on.
Okay. All right, that's
Okay.
what I was thinking. Yeah.
Okay, how about, do we have a motion related to those minutes?
I'll
I
motion to
approve those
approve.
minutes to be passed.
Then I'll second.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor to approve the minutes and we have a second by a roll call. Is there any discussion on the matter? All right, then we need a roll call vote, please.
James Brockwell,
Aye.
Rosa Cook,
Aye.
Erica Duncan,
Aye.
Jordan Evans,
Aye.
John Ewing,
Aye.
Tom Four,
Aye.
Pam Pruitt,
Aye, aye, aye.
Dwayne Roadcap,
Aye.
and Wayne Staples.
Aye.
All right, that did pass with a majority vote.
So the motion is set into action. Next on the agenda, we have the public comment period. Do we have any members of the public present, Ms. Lindsay?
I do believe we did have a member of the public join us. I think I saw Mr. Dietrich pop in. Let's see, Tanya, do I need to? Can you hear us all right?
I can hear you.
All right, did you want to offer comment during the comment period, Mr. Dietrich?
I did not this time.
Okay,
Well, thank you for joining us, Mr. Dietrich. So it sounds like we're ready to move forward. And with that is the next.
Is there-
I'm sorry.
I just want to make sure there's no one else that I didn't have noted.
We didn't
For
have
public
anyone
comment.
register, no.
Okay, all right, thank you, Tanya.
All right, so the next item moving forward is a case file number 2020-02557. I need to recuse this from myself, so I'm just going to turn my mic off. Mr. Ford, could you step in on my behalf?
Yes, we'll take care of it. If the staff will go ahead and introduce it.
You're muted, Joe.
You hear
My
me now?
apologies. Yeah, my apologies. Okay. Yes, beginning on page 17 of your agenda is a consent order for the board's consideration. The file number is 2020-2557. The respondent is Richard Tyrone Richardson. Is Mr. Richardson here? Okay. Doesn't sound like it. So the consent order before you, Mr. Chairman, is the respondent in the case was charged with a sole one count of violating the board's prohibited act for knowingly misrepresenting factual information and in expressing a professional opinion. The respondent in the consent order agreed or admitted to the violation charged in the report of findings and agreed to pay monetary penalties and board costs totaling $550. In addition, the respondent agreed to complete at least 3 years of education pertaining to laws and regulations within 6 months of the effective date of the order. And further, it was acknowledged by the respondent that satisfactory completion of the referenced continuing education hours would not count towards any continuing education requirements for renewal or reinstatement of the license. And so, Mr. Chairman, since this is the consent order, we would need a vote to either accept the consent order or to reject the consent order as presented.
Thank you, sir. So you've heard the case. Any discussion on the matter, or is there a vote? I mean, is there a motion to approve the consent order?
I make a motion to approve the consent.
We have a
Second.
motion. We have a second. Any further discussion?
Nope.
Hearing none. Ms. Lindsay, if you would call the roll.
Yes, Mr. Ford. James Brockwell,
Aye.
Rosa Cook,
Aye.
Erica Duncan,
Aye.
Jordan Evans,
Aye.
John Ewing,
Aye.
Tom Four.
Aye.
Miss Pruitt is recused. Dwayne Roadcap.
Aye.
Wayne Staples.
Aye.
The motion passes with a majority vote.
Thank you, ma'am. I'll turn it back over to the chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Four. I appreciate your
You're welcome.
efforts there. Next item on the agenda, we're going to move into other business, starting with examinations update.
Real quickly, we'll just before that, we have our regulatory actions update for Mr. Howard to give us.
Thank you, Madam Chair. On page 26 of your agenda, we have just a brief update on some ongoing regulatory actions from the board. The first couple of items are the periodic reviews that the board completed at its meeting in this past January. The board did a periodic review for the Waterworks and Wastewater Works operators licensing regulations and the on-site sewage system professionals licensing regulations. In both of those periodic reviews, the board did receive one comment for each of the regulations, but ultimately voted to retain the regulation as it stands right now. The other two items are fee adjustment actions that the board considered at its January meeting as well. The board authorized the filing of a notice of intended regulatory action to do fee adjustments for the Waterworks and Wastewater Works operators licensing regulations and the on-site sewage system professionals licensing regulations. Following the board's authorization of that NOIRA, staff did file the NOIRA at the beginning of February, and as we stand right now, both of those actions are currently under executive branch review. Following the completion of executive branch review, the NOIRA will be submitted for publication in the Virginia Register, and there will commence a 30-day public comment period. Did any members have any questions about the regulatory actions update?
Do not.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair.
You're welcome. Now, I will try to properly move forward with the agenda and move to other business with examination updates.
Yes, Madam Chair, on your agenda, we provide the examination statistics for both water and wastewater works, and then on-site sewage system professionals, and just a couple of things related to exams, if you don't mind indulging me for a moment. One, I want to apologize to Mr. Dietrich. He did indicate that he wanted me to share his email, and I'm sorry, I just saw that for some reason. I didn't get that earlier, but just to share with you his comments, and I can certainly distribute them to the board as well. He indicates that he works with waterworks operators who are taking the examination. Excuse me. He took his last operator exam in the 90s and remembers the open book days, but there were a number of folks who had trouble passing the exam. He came out of college and was acclimated to test taking and using references, so he was able to progress quickly. Now he's a manager of 10 waterworks operators, and he doesn't have any experience with the new exam, and he's not sure how to help operators prepare for those exams. He's told by operators about ambiguous questions with more than one correct answer. He's seen some of these questions himself in the training manuals, and he admits to not always being able to choose the most correct answer. Operators are tested on many kinds of treatment processes that they have no hands-on experience with. And especially at the his plant, the Bedford Regional Water Authority, as they have operators running a state-of-the-art membrane facility who've never worked at a conventional treatment plant. As a licensed operator, he sees the value of having a license that has reciprocity across the country. But as a manager, he just needs licensed operators. He's hearing that there's a problem with other utilities along those same lines. And he's not looking for an easy exam, but staff needs some real guidance to help them prepare for the exams. And maybe guidance exists, but he's not sure where to look for it. So that was his comments regarding the examination. So again, I apologize for not having that on the screen for you, but I will be happy to get it out to everyone. And then, and I think Mr. Diedrich is on the call if anyone has any particular questions for him.
I don't have any questions, but I would just tell him that here in Alta Vista, we run through the Sacramento course. They have to take it. And then once they do that, there is a AWWA book out there that has a number of the questions that are very similar to what you see on the exam, from microfiltration to conventional operation. And all of the operators are told up here, you need to be able to answer each one of those questions individually, and you need to tell me where you got that reference material from to be able to answer that question. What that does is build repetition on each area that they're looking at, whether it's working on pumps, whether it's working on electrical, whether it's working on bacterial testing, and knowing what the state and the federal regulations state what they are, because state by state, we don't have a lot of individual state questions. You have mainly the things that are going on across the country that are on that test. Having reviewed two sets of tests over 4 different years now, I've looked at all the questions, having been in the business 41 years. What we're asking for on those questions, yeah, you may have what appears to be right answers in the questions, but I would just submit to you there's only one correct answer on each one of those test questions. And there are a lot of questions going from the class 4 to the class 1 in the water levels. Again, they have to prove the answer to each one of those questions. It's over 1,000 questions in that book, but they have to show me where they got that reference material from. That's what we do here. And during the course of the last 4.5 years that I've been here, we had one class 2 operator, and the rest of them were below the 2 level. And currently we have 3 class 1 operators, 2 class 2 operators, and I have 1 trainee and 2 class 3s. So we're moving on up.
Thank you, Mr. Ford.
Thank you.
Anything else out there?
I don't know if this is the right place to put it, but I did have a complaint from somebody trying to register with PSI. Once you fail the test once, you can't register again online. You have to call them. And I witnessed this yesterday. We called them and the lady kept saying, I can't hear you. And she hung up. We called right back and the guy heard us, no problem. So the fact that you can't register the second time online once you fail, that's a little frustrating for my guys down here.
Thank you. Anything else?
I have noted that, and I heard about that, I think previously. And so I know Shannon, our exams director, has been, I think I email her every day. So the fact that she hasn't blocked me is great. Has been working hard on these. Shannon, are you familiar with this, or do you have any other information on that? Not to put you on the spot.
That's fine. No, I did write it down just to send some information to the ABC to get that squared away. To see what the issue is with that, or what. But once we're done with the meeting, I will definitely reach out to ABC and see what's going on with that.
Thank you so much, Shannon. And also in Ms. Cook's world, we have been working on getting Mountain Empire Community College as an examination site for the water and wastewater exams. And so that's been a process long underway. Unfortunately, I think it was kind of being worked on at the beginning of the pandemic and everything. And so we were slowed down by that. She received notice this week that it should be up and running. We've run into some technical difficulties that Ms. Webster is working on, and so we hope to resolve that, as soon as possible. But we are very excited to have an exam site there in that area, and Ms. Cook has been very much an advocate for getting a site there, so I'm glad it's coming together.
I have a question, Tricia. On the exam sites, as you know, we do have a training program for wastewater operators for licensure review, and a part of that is always an exam update. What's the current status on the out-of-state locations, specifically Salisbury, Maryland, and Johnson City, Tennessee? Do they accept Virginia license takers there?
That's where my guys have had to go, Wayne, is Johnson City. So
Either there or Roanoke, I guess.
Right, so they've had to go, or Kentucky. We've
Oh,
got
I
one
didn't even know they had one in Kentucky.
I
Okay.
think it's Middlesboro, which I didn't know until yesterday. So that's the closest one. We didn't really have one in Virginia that was closer than 3.5 hours from us.
Yeah.
So Johnson City does take Virginia.
And I think Salisbury, Maryland will take the Eastern Shore people that might be going for a license. But I was just wondering, because we do have that as a part of our update. And I will be very happy to enter Mountain Empire the next time we teach that class, hopefully.
And certainly Shannon can correct me if I'm wrong. I think one of the things with having the ABC exam is it can be taken at any of the PSI sites, but it may have to be arranged in advance if it's not like we're an ABC state. So obviously PSI has the exams available. Am I right on that, Shannon, or am I making that up entirely?
You are correct. The way that I have it here is, so I just want to make sure the Johnson City site and the Salisbury, Maryland site were taking Waterworks and Wastewater exams. You could take those exams there, because I don't have that listed for those sites.
Yes, my students have had to go to Johnson City, Tennessee to take their Virginia Water and Wastewater Works license.
Okay.
I don't know about Maryland, but I'm sure Wayne does.
That's my understanding is the same thing there, that if they're on the Eastern Shore and they want to go for a license, it's either go to Virginia Beach across the Bay Bridge Tunnel or go up to Maryland to Salisbury and take it up there.
Okay.
Just Shannon, probably before you were with us, those two sites were traditionally sites that were offered through PSI for our various exams, because they kind of covered the Eastern Shore and then the western part of the state. And so those have traditionally been on the list, and it sounds like people are still using them even though they aren't officially on Virginia's list.
Yeah. Well, they have them for everyone else, but like not the AB, because it's A&P, the A&P piece. And so apparently they have migrated to using all of them. Okay. I will get that updated on the website at least. But yeah, we've been using Salisbury and Johnson City for other boards. I just wasn't aware that it was being done for the A&P side of PSI. I'll get that updated. But yes, okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to updates from the OSSP committee. I think now we can entertain Mr. Ewing and Ms. Lindsay at the same time.
Well, I'll do a brief introduction if that's all right with Mr. Ewing, and then I'm going to turn it over to him.
That's fine.
Okay, this committee was put together at the last board meeting. Staff had brought up, a few things that had come up in terms of application processing. A lot of it related to reciprocity and kind of understanding the different types of systems that are regulated in other states and trying to figure out how to make those comparisons. And one of the things we pointed to was for water and wastewater, there's an out-of-state experience form that kind of lists checkbox style different treatment methods and all of that to help us make that comparison. And so we, as staff, kind of got together since we were having our on-site sewage system professionals in and their expertise all at the table at one time, got together everything we could think of that we've been encountering related to licensing and application processing for on-site sewage system professionals. So we discussed reciprocity and amending forms, regulations, and some legislative items as well. And so that's kind of the broad overview of us asking the committee to meet. And Mr. Ewing chaired the committee for us. And so I'll turn it over to him to offer some more details and information on the committee.
Oh, right. So yeah, I've definitely had some experience just to go more into what the difficulties are of reciprocity. I've had some experience with the phone call of like, does, this guy sound like, from wherever it was from, another country or another state, even another country, does this match up with here with what we do? It's like, we really have no idea what they're doing there. And I feel like an enhanced form, I think we all thought that some kind of an enhanced form like other applications could really help the initial staff that's going through it understand a lot more what these people understand with not having, a lot of big understanding of what they do. So at least to have some check boxes on the forms seemed like a simple way to get things started. And we had certainly some suggestions of how it could be worded. And I think we believe that, getting somebody else's take on it too wouldn't be a bad idea, just for going forward with it. And we went into some other discussions, and I guess I could take this opportunity to talk about the sort of new business items that I guess I brought up one, and that's how our dealings, the on-site people, the three of us, two of us, it's our profession to understand permits and applications really well. James, being a pumper, knows a lot about pumping, but in reality, he doesn't have to deal with permits a lot. So if a complaint comes across that has to do with permitting, a lot of cases we have found Pam or I are doing the IFF, so we have to recuse ourselves. And in other cases, because we may know the people, we may have to recuse ourselves. Pam and I know a lot of people. Dwayne has certainly had to recuse himself a few times for some things that were involving the on-site. So we wound up having very few people on the board that understand permitting as it is. And a huge gap that is a big problem across everything is local VDH staff would be a wonderful person to have represented on the board. VDH happens to employ the highest number of licensed people. Without any doubt, I think that in the state they have the most licensed people, and they appear to be somewhat misinformed or uninformed. You can look at the VHA conference agenda for this year and past years, and DPOR is never invited to speak at this group of incredible amount of licensed people. I've joined VHA. Of course, there was no, I don't think they had any kind of conference last year, online or in person. It all came kind of crashing down at the last minute before their conference, which is like next week. And there's certainly a lot of cool on-site things on their agenda, including Lance talking about regulations, Lance Gregory with VDH downtown. And one thing I would like to get anything across to this board is there's two VDHs. There's two. There's the downtown people that a lot of you are really more in tune with and understand. Of course, because the wastewater and Waterworks. But the local ones, that's a totally different VDH. That is a totally different VDH. VDH staff, local staff, they deal daily in and out with permits like Pam's and like mine, the AOSE stuff, the people who have the special license to do this work in a certain little realm. Downtown usually deals with bigger fish, commercial and bigger stuff that engineers do. So the downtown staff really don't do a lot of reviews of AOSE permits unless the local people don't like them, and then they'll push them downtown to say you deal with it and figure out, you approve it, that's fine. But a lot of local staff sometimes push things off, and they're the ones that see it day in, day out. And they're missing. I think engineers are missing too. That engineers know the line that do this work. Know the line as well, should know the line as well as the AOSEs themselves know where their work ends, what they can do. And I feel like engineers that deal with permits would also help us and help the board understand the process of permits and the problems within it involving licensure, frankly. There's a lot of problems in the process that we can unearth that could really help fix a lot of things, I think, by just getting those two members on the board. So that's what I had to say is the final word, I think, before we kind of checked out. But we did work hard, and we had some great discussions. You should have been there. But I think the staff really got to like what we were trying to say very well. So I think it was a time well spent, and we all agreed it was great just being able to really have a discussion kind of forum to kind of, and then it was wonderful having people just write it all down. Say that was pretty fun. So.
Thank you.
And just to fill in a little bit, and for us, it was absolutely, I was going to say helpful, but essential to have the committee members there to kind of give us the terminology and how we needed to frame things for what we'd be looking for on experience and some of the things that, we encounter with the regulations on an application processing side, and to kind of be able to give that real world viewpoint. And so just as a couple of things, if the board wanted to kind of consider pursuing these, one, the issue that Mr. Ewing talked about with the board composition, we currently have laid out in statute the positions on the board. And of course, when on-site sewage system professionals were added, it added 3 members to the board, which includes our alternative operator, alternative installer, and on-site soil evaluator on the board. And so one of the items of discussion, as Mr. Ewing indicated, is that we oftentimes run into situations where we will lose the expertise in the room, kind of out of necessity, because we need that expertise during the earlier reviews related to an application, a case file, most typically. And then with it being a relatively small population, that certainly affects it even more. And so the committee talked about seeing if there was a way to put forward expanding the membership of the board to include a local health department staff member, along with a professional engineer involved in this. And Director Bruce Vaughn can certainly fill in more. We do have, a process whereby if a board asks staff to put, a legislative item forward for consideration, we can certainly put that together to forward it. I just want to make sure that I don't create any unrealistic expectations. Obviously, what goes forward in the administration's package is dependent every year on what's going on, whether it's politically or just overall. Obviously this past year, I would venture to say not a whole lot got forward from the agencies, just because so much of the work that was done was dealing with things related to the pandemic. So even if we put it forward, it's not a guarantee in any way. Anytime we're looking at expanding the board, there would be, certainly some, kind of, information we would have to share to support growing a regulatory board. So I would want to, if the board wanted me to work on putting that forward for consideration, I would ask that the board vote on it, just so that I have the direction from the board to do so. But before we get to that, if you don't mind, I just want to make sure our director doesn't have anything to add, since she's the core of all of those things that happen.
Madam Chair, that's exactly the perfect summary. All agencies have the right to make requests to the administration for legislation. And when I say the right, I mean the obligation. We're not allowed to freelance bill requests. And those all get filtered up, and some rise to the top and some do not. It's just a matter of what else is in the hopper and the nature of the session. Again, this year, with it being virtual and during a pandemic, everything, there were strict bill limits. We'll see what happens this coming session. So we would be happy, if it's the will of the board, to draft something and make that request, with the understanding we do not know whether it would eventually be approved to move forward, both for reasons of overall bill limits and concerns that anyone in the administration may have about growing government or anything else. I also caution that any time you put in a bill to open up your statutes, you run the risk of anyone else doing something to your statute you may not like. It's just the nature of the legislative process. So again, if anyone wishes to make a motion to give staff some direction as to what the will of the board may be, we will of course move in that direction.
Thank you. I see that there's a number of hands raised, and I believe the first was Dwayne Roadcap. Mr. Roadcap, if you have something.
Thanks, Pam. I appreciate it. So I have a question. I've noticed, so the problem I think we're trying to solve is making sure that we have expertise at the board when we're considering enforcement actions from a formal or informal process. And I know that within the Virginia Department of Health, when we're dealing with that kind of issue, the health department can go to an approved, so let's say, for example, we need an attorney to evaluate a formal hearing. We can go to the Supreme Court list, and the Supreme Court has a list of attorneys that we can hire to help us deliberate a conflict or a regulatory issue. And so my question is it possible for the board to approve a list of people that the board could use for this purpose, or does DPOR actually have to use someone from the board for those process issues?
Madam Chair, I can pop in here.
Thank you.
DPOR uses the informal fact-finding conference procedure, and the hearing officers for formal conferences are to be the presiding officers. Our issue isn't the need for presiding officers so much as the technical assistance along the way that then involves the recusal of board members. Some boards do, however, use former board members, for example, on contract to provide technical assistance. The issue, as I understand it, and Ms. Lindsay can correct me if I'm wrong, is that this particular population doesn't have really enough to call on to make that viable. So, for example, on the Appel Sidla board, there are enough former board member and professional engineers, that when that's been an issue for technical review, we have been able to call on a former PE to assist with technical review and not need to taint a board member. That's not, I think, practically so much an option in the OSSP.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I guess what I was thinking about technical expertise, so I was using the attorney as an analogy to say, could we have a list of technical people? And what I'm hearing you say is if we were to have a list of technical people, they'd have to be former board members. We couldn't like pull a population of technical people that the board approves.
The board certainly could. There would need to be specific parameters set, and that would generally, we've used former board members in that way because they not only have the technical expertise, but an understanding of the regulations and other guardrails about our processes.
Thank you for that. You know, my perspective would be that it would be an easier path, if it's possible to do, and the board would concur, for the board to create the parameters by which we would create a list of experts to draw from when we need to have them as part of an IFFC process, and then that preserves John and Pam and me and any other board member from having to recuse ourselves, other than perhaps other outside business interests, you know, that we're not part of it. But I don't know if that solves the problem or resolves the problem, but that would get you to a quicker solution potentially.
Thank you. We're going to move forward with the next hand I saw was Mr. Brockwell.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to make a comment about Mr. Ewing's, the makeup of our board, or the 3 members for the onsite. If we are looking to potentially expand some more representation for the onsite, I'd like for you folks to consider, my situation is I represent the operators. I've got operator experience, but my business is predominantly pumping. And I've had to do review a few of the cases for operators, and I think even maybe installers, that I really don't have that much experience with. I've got more than most, but still it would have been more for Ms. Pruitt or Mr. Ewing to take a look at, but for whatever reason they couldn't. So I guess my point is if we're looking to maybe expand the onsite, I think it would be nice to have the evaluator, the installer, a true operator, and then a pumper.
Thank you.
Yes.
Responses to Mr. Brockwell's, is that you, Dwayne? No. Okay, then I'm going to move forward with Mr. Ford.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. In the makeup of the board currently, the VDH representative and the DEQ representative, do they have the ability to send forth a designee into these meetings and represent them and vote on things? So if they do, can they not send forward somebody with an expertise to do an IFF?
Mr. Ford, if I may, Madam Chair.
Yes.
Those 2 positions can certainly be filled by designees. In fact, I think, if I'm not mistaken, Mr. Staples serves as a designee for that position identified with DEQ. And so the issue is not so much of their ability to serve as presiding officers at informal fact-finding conferences, because they certainly could as members of the board. It's more their positions are representative for VDH of the Office of Drinking Water, and for DEQ with the State Water Control Board dealing with wastewater issues. So we've kind of had the last couple of members in the VDH seat just so happen to have past experience with the Office of Environmental Health and working with the on-site sewage system program. But of course, you know, that's just a happenstance. I think, you know, Mr. Roadcap is here as a representative of the Office of Drinking Water. So yes, they could certainly be used in their positions as a presiding officer if that were to be necessary, or even a technical review. But of course, one of the things is, of course, with the makeup of the board, it existed for decades with just Waterworks and Wastewater Works operators. And so the representation kind of mirrors what would have been necessary for Waterworks and Wastewater Works operators in that regulatory program for so many years. And so it's, you know, a relatively new development if you consider a decade plus of licensing of on-site sewage system professionals to have those positions on the board. So that was kind of part of the discussion of the committee.
Okay, and a part of that question, I just want to follow up from a standpoint of right now, currently, we have a Waterworks operator representative, Waterworks owner representative, and we have a Waterworks operator. So we got two people, right?
Right. We have each of the actual operator positions and then representatives of owners of each of those types of facilities.
All right. So we have basically 4 members covering water and wastewater.
Right.
And
then
we're the ones that are called for IFF. Now, I just know from again, I'm dually licensed. I was on the board of supervisors in my locality for 12 years. I know how the health department operates there, and I know the health department has multifaceted layers. We're on the environmental side. We've got, you know, one person that works in the health department that's dealing with, you know, all the review of any septic systems and all that other stuff that are going in. And my point here is that we're going to run into situations from time to time. We have 25 members on this board, and we're just going to be sitting here talking like we're talking now and spinning our wheels. I would prefer that we stay as lean as we possibly can. In that, you know, we have 3 representatives, and I know that you guys are going to be you're on the OSS, you know, on-site sewer system professionals. On your side, there are going to be a lot of conflicts right now because you're a decade old, and until we work out the bugs and we get people doing what they're supposed to be doing, yes, we're going to have a problem with IFF, and that's why I'm asking from a standpoint, and maybe that's the thing to do that Mr. Brockwell brought up and even was discussed by Mr. Roadcap, is that if we designate who our list of professionals could be, that would be the way to do it. I don't really see a need to increase the size of this board. That's my opinion. And thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next, I'd like to recognize Mr. Ewing.
Yeah, sorry. I was just going more into what we were talking about during the meeting, that on-site is actively really growing the actual industry. And right now, what we've gone through and what we've seen in the last year with the pandemic, it's going to steer everything towards more on-site. Companies like big companies like Capital One are making plans to not going back to work. So we are going to see the ability for people to instead pay higher taxes and property costs to be able to live in the boondocks once we have internet. So the future of on-site is huge. With all that said, there's going to be more people working at home in the next 10 years than we've ever seen before. And I think that more people on the board with the kind of knowledge we need, and we really need to bring in the it's like a different license because they are agents of the state. They are working for the director of the health department, and it is one giant entity that has so many licensed people that have a specific view on all of this. It is greatly missed on this board. Somebody in the private sector, all three of us, who are represented on-site. Dwayne Roadcap has a past in on-site, but he is there for Waterworks. We are missing somebody from the health department to represent the health department well as far as on-site goes. That is something that is sorely missing from our side of things. So if I had just one, that's what it would be. And I think a hybrid of what we're talking about, of getting that one health department locality person who does this stuff day in, day out, and sees a lot of different private sector permits come across their desk, is something that this board is sorely missed. And I feel like everybody who's not in the on-site can't see this because these health department people, you've seen small little blips of them. And if you go back to what you remember of some on-site people that have come across this board that work at the health department at a locality, I feel like the proof is in the pudding of how well educated they were about the regulations and what they were saying about themselves, about what they actually did. It's so contrary to the regulations that it's ridiculous. So I think that if I could stand to just get one, that's what it would be. And I also think it's a good idea in the meantime, because this is like everybody's saying, lower your expectations. It's COVID. Raise your hands if your expectations are high for a whole lot of stuff. I don't know. It's what I feel that is really necessary, and I feel like you have to be on the on-site side of the fence to see it, to know that there's so many people that aren't represented in this that actually do this work and who actually see a lot of the goings on. And it's a big part of the problem between DPOR and VDH that we don't have that cohesion with those people. That is a whole different topic.
Thank you.
Mr. Ewing and Madam Chair, if I may.
Yes.
Could Mr. Ewing, could you expound for me, since I wasn't at the committee meeting, the public protection component of that argument versus what might be construed as any other perspective in terms of, I guess, either representing the licensee or the industry or anything like that. I just want to, if to the extent that wherever the board wishes to go, I need a better understanding of that perspective. What adding that kind of membership to the board does for the public protection.
One word is enforcement of VDH's regs and DPOR's regs together. And that's the purpose of the health department, I thought, to enforce regulations.
This
and
board
I thought
doesn't
code of the VIT. Yeah, I mean that's where I'm at. I mean it's enforcement, and the purpose of the enforcement is to protect public health.
But this board doesn't enforce VDH regulations.
Right, and VDH doesn't do a lot big well of enforcing DPR's regulations sometimes.
Well,
so that's
neither
and
can
what
enforce
lies the problem. But not having licensed people. I mean, there's still unlicensed people doing work, and it's getting approved by health department people. That to me is a problem for DPOR. And unlicensed people ultimately do well. What I find to be less work or less quality work, and I think effectively that could affect public health.
And I'm neither agreeing nor disagreeing. I'm just want to make sure that the problem if accepting the problem statement, everyone is identifying what is an appropriate potential solution when talking about board composition.
Thank you, both of you. I think
Right.
that Mr. Roadcap looks like his head's going to burst if he doesn't say something. And he's got his hand up, and I got my hand up too. I think we're almost talking. Oh, look, everybody's hand went down except for Mr. Brockwell. Do you want to say something, Mr. Brockwell? Okay, then my hand's up.
My hand's not up. I don't
Okay.
think.
I'm going to lower my hand now and put in my 2 cents. I'm seeing two different issues, and one of them I will go into later on under outreach because I think it's more appropriate down there. But I think that at some point in the past, and I do not recall when it was, but I do believe that Trapper Davis was at one of the board meetings where we discussed use of former board members in the on-site industry for purposes such as being a hearing officer. Two of the board members, Trapper Davis and Brooke Philpy, both have health department experience, and they both have boots on the ground experience as opposed to being at a higher level. So I don't know statute wise and I think Mary and Trish could both speak to this more adequately than I can, but I don't know what the ability of the board is to call on those previous members as IFFC officers. But I would put that out there. I heard it, I think maybe through Dwayne or somebody else or Tom I would put that out there as an idea just to get, if we have an IFFC, then those persons are available. And obviously they'd have to agree to it. But that's my 2 cents on that matter. Is there anything further anybody wants to say on that?
I don't have a problem with using former board members as long as it's a policy that has been set forth. I know in times past, we've had past board members come up and help out with reviewing tests, sample tests and all of that. I don't know if they've been used for IFF. Trish, have they been?
We have, and as Director Bruce Vaughn indicated, it is our practice as an agency that whenever it's possible to use former board members to kind of fill that that area of expertise that we may need. The difficulty with this board and the on-site sewage system program in particular is that you three members are only the second round of members that we've ever had in those positions on the board. So it definitely narrows the pool. And without getting into the specifics of the prior board members or anything like that, but we also have to look at what they're doing now, how long it's been since they were on the board. We've been through, an entire reg change and all of those different things. And so there's a lot of factors that we do look at. But Mr. Ford, you're absolutely correct. I believe if I'm not mistaken, you have used Mr. Green since he's gone off the board, but he's a relatively new, former board member. And so there's a lot of different things. And quite frankly, even if we were to utilize, the former board members, it's still a very, very small pool for on-site sewage system professionals. So those are just some of the challenges that we have.
Understood. And is there any understanding that not everybody is always going to know everything that there is to know about everything? And I definitely, during my career, have had to call on folks to be able to make a determination of which way was the best way to go. Many times it involved me calling VDH. Many times it involved me calling DEQ. And sometimes it's been me calling the EPA because VDH and DEQ couldn't help me out. And so the crux to the lead and copper rule right now, I need to know whether I've got to evaluate from the meter to the house. Do I need to know whether I got lead in that? And I'm still looking for a straight answer. And so with that being said, if y'all need a pool of a professional look, I've been doing this stuff for 41 years, and before Onsite ever showed up, I saw septic tanks going in the ground. I knew what was required under the law back then. You got a set of regulations for every set of plans for alternatives. You got a set of plans for all this stuff. And if I've got that information in front of me, I guarantee you I'll help you out with whether somebody did something right or something wrong. Because I review, multi-million-dollar projects for water lines, sewer plant upgrades, electrical upgrades. So I'll be more than happy to help you out. If you need a person on that side. But again, going back to what I was previously saying, while we need more on-site retirees to be able to call back in, this board's size right now is it's big, and we've been going at it an hour now. It's time for a coffee break, Madam Chairman. So I throw that out there, but I believe Jordan's got a question, or he raised his hand.
I see a couple hands raised. Mr. Staples has got his hand raised.
Yeah, if I'll address the idea there of the number of ex-board members on the OSSP side, I agree that right now it's limited, but it's not going to be limited forever, because as the board ages, there are going to be additional members or past members, as it were. So I'm not sure if that's the justification we need to have to increase the size of the board. How that being said, however, I do agree with John that possibly we do need somebody with some feet on the ground experience from that local health department's side. That made a lot of sense to me listening to what you were saying.
Thank you.
That's all I have.
Thank you. Anybody else wishing to speak on this matter?
Madam Chair, if I can make one comment. Thank you. It sounds like we're in brainstorming mode, and I don't want to prolong this any more than it needs to be. But while we are in brainstorming mode, I was going to toss out there, and I say this fully aware of my presence on the board without having professional experience in any of these spaces. But I do think that the citizen member seat on the board is quite broad and perhaps a flex position that could be adapted from time to time to address the in the moment needs of the board. So I would offer that as an alternative solution as well. Sounds like there may be some additional discussion down the road about as far as whether the solution is more of a board expansion versus some sort of regulatory or staff level solution. But I did just want to toss that out there that perhaps going forward, if there's a significant need and there's an absence of a statutory solution, the citizen member seat could be used to fill a gap. As ironic as that might sound coming from my mouth.
Thank you. At this point, I'm going to make a quick suggestion. I have right now 10:35. I'm going to suggest that we take a 10-minute break, return at 10:45, and then if someone has a motion regarding this matter, we should consider that and move forward with our agenda.
Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Yes, I shall see you at 10:45.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I have 10:45. Do we need a roll call, Ms. Lindsay?
I believe we are okay to get started. I'm just going down the list real quickly. Looks like we have everyone back. Certainly a quorum.
Very good. Looping back around to when we broke, I would like to ask if there is a motion to be put forward on the matter at hand.
I had just one more thing to say.
Okay.
We're talking about the numbers. The comparison was made with number of wastewater, waterworks. Look who you have. Onsite does not have anybody in an official capacity from the state agency we deal with the most. Wastewater and Waterworks has DEQ and VDH. The VDH, Dwayne, has experience, but he can't speak on an official capacity for Onsite. I don't know how that's not a problem. It certainly seems like a problem for me, and I felt that way. I don't know about you, Pam. I'm throwing it back to you. How do you feel about that?
I can see both sides of it. In all honesty, having had former health department experience, and part of what I'm going to say a little later on relies on some of that experience, and I've worked many different facets of the industry. So I do feel that a boots on the ground perspective can be very important. I also have concerns about finding the appropriate party if such an addition to the board could be approved or moved forward. You're going to need someone with a lot of background in the on-site, and because there's a huge disparity with information that gets provided to boots on the ground staff.
Yeah, I think it's probably more realistic. I mean, it's a dream of mine to have somebody local, but it's probably it's going to be somebody from downtown just because that's just how they roll. But,
well, I think that you have to consider the amount of this time.
Is it me, everybody?
What? Who?
We lost you, Pam.
No.
Oh, we lost
Yeah.
Pam. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, because I was like, what happened there?
I was
no,
checking
I
my
was saying
pulse and stuff. I didn't know something was wrong with me. I was like, what's going on? I don't feel
well,
right.
to reiterate what I was saying is that I can see both sides. I'm basically feeling like I'm walking the razor's edge on it, and I don't think that I need to consider it more to have a really good opinion on it. I'm right. I can't offer a good opinion either way.
Madam Chairman, if I could, I would offer up, if we could table this and give us a little bit more time to think about it and bring it up at our next board meeting. I would make a motion to table this discussion until the next board meeting.
I would second that.
So I have a motion and a second to table the discussion until a future time. Any discussion on the matter? All right, then we need to vote by a roll call, please.
Yes, the motion to table it. James Brockwell.
Aye.
Rosa Cook. Erica Duncan.
Oh, aye.
Jordan Evans.
Aye.
John Ewing.
Aye.
Tom Four.
Aye.
Pam Pruitt.
Aye.
Dwayne Roadcap.
Aye.
Wayne Staples.
Aye.
All right. And if there's any information that I can put together that would be helpful for the future discussion, feel free to reach out to me and I'll be glad to compile that. In the meantime, I can certainly talk to our folks that handle the various processes, with our investigative staff and adjudication and all of that, and kind of talk through and see if there are some other options. You know, it may be some situations that can be handled through staff. I do know, if I'm not mistaken, we have used Mr. Four on an on-site sewage system case in the past. So certainly we can kind of look at exploring some internal options on how to deal with this in the interim. And just so that you're fully aware, if the board does decide to put something forward based on deadlines in the administration, I believe it would have to be done at the July board meeting, because our time frame to get it in is either late August or September. So just wanting to put all of that out there.
Thank you. Mr. Ford, did you have another comment? Your hand is raised.
Yeah, just the last thing, is there anything that would prevent us from having a person that has that technical expertise serve with somebody like myself that doesn't know much about nothing?
I think you know a lot.
Well, I'm just asking the question, if I were to have that local person that John was speaking of sitting in the room with me when I'm hearing the case, to be able to review and make a recommendation, is there anything that would prevent us from having that person in an IFF meeting with me?
If I may, there are times that we do have VDH staff members just dealing with the on-site sewage system professional cases specifically to participate in order to provide information and testimony on their processes. So there are times that we do have call on those resources as part of the complaint process.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. That's what I was looking for.
Thank you very much. And thank you especially all for such a good discussion and input on the matter. With that, I propose to move the agenda forward with a discussion of
Madam Chair, I'm sorry, there is one more thing under the committee, not to prolong it. One of the discussions dealt with starting a general review of the on-site sewage system professional regulations. And so what I would ask is, right now we are not really in a position to move forward on that because we're still kind of exploring some of the issues. But I would like to broach the board in terms of how the board would be interested in proceeding with a general review. We would be looking at a late fall, winter timeframe to start that. With other boards, we often use committees. So we might have a combination of board members as well as citizen members that might constitute professionals, other stakeholder representatives, without having the committee be too large and unwieldy. So wanted to first see if the board is interested in beginning the general review later this year, how they would like to go about that so that we can begin the work behind the scenes on kind of putting that together.
Mr. Ford. I can't hear you.
I would offer all three of the on-site professionals to be on the committee. Would also ask Jordan if he would serve on the committee. And then if you need the fifth, I would be more than happy to serve on the committee.
Anyone else? Is that a motion you're making, Mr. Ford?
Yes, ma'am. That is a motion.
All right. So we have Trish, were you about to say something?
Yes. At this juncture, certainly if there's a motion to include those particular positions, I would like to ask if discussions about possible citizen members or other stakeholder representatives, if part of the motion could be to have staff do that in conjunction with the chair to identify other members for the committee.
That's my motion, Madam Chairman.
Okay, so to restate the motion, we are, the motion on the floor is to have the three on-site board members plus Mr. Ford, and to include by the chair a review of potential citizen members and other industry members. Am I correct?
I would add Jordan Evans.
Oh, Jordan. Yes, I'm sorry, Jordan. Okay, so are we clear on what the motion is?
I am. We need a second, Madam Chairman.
Yes, we need a second. All right, we have Mr. Staples as the second. Do we have any discussion on the matter? Then we need to vote by a roll call, please.
James Brockwell,
Aye.
Rosa Cook,
Aye.
Erica Duncan,
Aye.
Jordan Evans,
Aye.
John Ewing,
Aye.
Tom Four,
Aye.
Pam Pruitt,
Yes.
Dwayne Roadcap,
Aye.
and Wayne Staples.
Aye.
All right, the motion passes with a majority vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, next, I'm lost on the agenda. We've discussed board composition, discussion on statutory authority and DPOR policy regarding issuance of cease and desist orders. Is that where we are, Ms. Lindsay?
Yes, it is, Madam Chair. And just as a reminder for the board, this came up as, I believe, a part of discussion under other business at the last meeting. And so reached out to my colleagues with our investigations division. They are here to, or I believe Jonathan Darden is here. Valerie Matney, if she's not with us, she's our field director of investigations, may be joining us as well, are going to give an overview of the cease and desist process. And so with that, I will, I'm going to stop presenting, Jonathan, and turn it over to Jonathan Darden with our investigations division.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for having me here today. Again, my name is Jonathan Darden. I'm one of the directors of investigations here at the department. I've been with the agency since 2005, all of which time I've been in the investigations section. So I'm going to start sharing my screen with you. Okay, so what I'd like to do this morning is just talk a little bit about the background as to where the cease and desist notice came from, our statutory authority, and then get into a little bit about the burden of proof and what it takes for us, or what we consider before we issue a cease and desist notice. And then I'll be happy to take any questions from the board. Back in 2018, the operational study that came from JLARC on the department's practices recommended granting statutory authority to the department to issue cease and desist notices. The intent or purpose behind this was to increase the deterrent to unlicensed activity without the cost or delays of the court system. So in July of 2019, there was language that was added to the Code of Virginia, which granted the DPR director or her designee the authority to issue cease and desist notices for violations pertaining to the unlicensed practice of professions which require a license. So with that greater authority also comes greater responsibility, specifically for the staff here at the department. And what I mean by that is because you now have department staff that are going to be making determinations of violations of law that would have typically taken place in the courthouse should we have decided to prosecute a case. So one of the big things that we are impressing upon investigative staff before they even consider whether to issue a cease and desist notice is to ensure that the investigative file and the case record clearly demonstrate a violation of any of the unlicensed laws. Now that is extremely important because the burden of proof in a criminal matter is significantly different than the burden of proof in addressing a regulatory matter. When we make disciplinary recommendations in regulatory cases, our burden of proof is what is considered a preponderance of evidence. That means more than likely somebody has violated the board's regulations, and from a percentile standpoint, it's 51% or greater. When we look into violations of law and consider the burden of proof in that particular arena, the burden of proof is much higher. That particular standard is proving somebody violated the law beyond a reasonable doubt. So when I look at complaints that come in specific to unlicensed activity, I look for things like, it directs staff to look for things like, do we have a witness, a victim, or a consumer that, number one, is willing to testify to the allegations that are made? Number two, can they positively ID an individual? Number three, are there any type of contract records that individuals can turn over to establish that professional relationship that may have required a license? And then so on down the list. I'm going to look for proof of payment. And then one of the big things we're going to look into is whether or not the work performed actually required a license. So because we have all those factors in trying to establish whether or not somebody violated the law and not a regulation, I've got to ensure that our case file is complete. So things like an anonymous complaint coming in that says somebody might be working, 2 miles down the street and doing something that requires a license is not going to substantially cut it for all the reasons that I just mentioned. We're going to have sufficient evidence to even before we even consider the process of issuing a cease and desist notice. If we are able to tie all those things together that I spoke of, and we are without a doubt certain that somebody has violated the law, then we'll start looking at our issuance considerations that are in front of you. Those start with whether or not we're dealing with ignorance or an unintentional violation of the licensure laws. Are they proactively willing to seek compliance? And by that, I mean, have they started the appropriate license application process, and has the application been received by the department? Are they willing to proactively mitigate the nature of the violation of law? Meaning, if they took money from somebody and didn't do something, have they returned those funds? Are we dealing with a complainant that may not be willing to participate as a witness in a criminal court process? And then lastly, did the Commonwealth attorney decline prosecution? So I don't have to have all of those factors in play. Those are just factors that we're going to consider prior to issuing a cease and desist notice. Now, what will get you excluded from us issuing a cease and desist notice are the following items. The unlicensed individual or entity involves dishonest or fraudulent conduct. The unlicensed individual or entity poses a substantial financial or safety risk to the public, and or they've had prior cases against the same individual or entity where we've established previous violations of the particular licensing laws. So I know that's a very brief overview of the cease and desist notice process, but if the board has any questions, I'd be happy to do my best to try and answer them.
Mr. Roadcap.
One question would be, how many complaints do you get or requests for cease and desist versus how many you actually issue? Because of the higher burden of proof and all of those considerations, I would think it would be a relatively low percentage of situations that develop to a cease and desist order.
Well, not surprisingly, a lot of them are going to end up in the contractor realm because of the nature of the work. But when we got the process underway back in January, as of last week, we've issued 13 cease and desist notices to unlicensed individuals. 12 have been to unlicensed contractors, and 1 has been to an unlicensed home inspector.
Anybody else? I hear crickets. Well, thank you.
Madam Chairman, I would say I appreciate what you all do and how you have to do it. And you're probably going to see more on the on-site as time goes on, because I think Mr. Ewing has stated it very well that with people staying at home, be a lot more people putting water into their septic systems. And with that being said, there are certain systems that have to be inspected, routinely. And with it being known and with the industry dealing with folks that do not have those licensure already, they're probably having people check their system out that do not have the proper licensure to be able to do it anyway. So again, appreciate what you do for the Commonwealth, and thank you for your presentation. It was well put together.
Thank you, Mr. Ford.
Madam Chair, if I may, and I'd like to echo Mr. Ford and thanking Jonathan and his team for all their excellent work and trying to thread that needle, because it is rather complicated legally. And in terms of that underlying issue with inspections and increased work and concern about unlicensed activity, I want to reassure the board that we do continue to try to work with our partners at VDH in this area in terms of finding non-legislative solutions to where we can do cross checks and have the checks and balances in place, for example, on permit applications or inspections, to be checking for a licensure. If the application or inspection, requests and verifies the need for a license, the way that, for example, building officials are required to check for a valid contractor license, those kinds of cross checks, while they don't eliminate all instances of unlicensed activity, do help prevent and catch most of them, or if not most of them, more of them, let's say. And so to the extent that, we can encourage that kind of, compliance, we'll continue to do so.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm gonna propose, if we have no further discussion or questions, to move forward with the agenda. And thank you so much for your presentation. It was very useful, especially to me.
You're welcome. Thank you for everybody's time this morning.
So I have the next agenda item as the discussion of CPE credit for board meeting attendance. Hey, I like that one.
Yes, and to give you a sneak preview of this item at our recent co-presenting event last week. The issue that I wanted to put before the board for discussion today, I've kind of heard is part of discussions in other matters, but I wanted to get some specific guidance from the board. And so we put together a draft document. Should the board choose to go forward with this, that we would ask that we be able to put it out for as a guidance document, which would trigger public hearing or public comment, excuse me, not public hearing, public comment period and all of that. The overall issue is about gaining CPE credit for attending WWOOSSP board meetings. We've heard this come up, and certainly, from a, staff perspective, we're always encouraging people to attend board meetings, see how it works, see the thought that you all put into the work that you do, that while they just get the snippet of the end result, they often aren't aware of the discussions and all of that take place in the middle. And so from that perspective, certainly, we encourage people to attend. Taking it into the realm of earning CPE credit, we just wanted to, if that is the choice of the board, we wanted to kind of put some more concrete parameters around it, and looking at it to be fair for our regulants and attendees, also to make sure that staff can have our processes in place to accurately track people attending, so that they can get the CPE credit, but then also to ensure that there's not a any issues with you all who hold licenses, also, getting credit fairly alongside your colleagues in the industry that may not be board members currently. So we put together some draft guidelines for the board to consider, and we can certainly amend, delete, add, however the board would see fit. Essentially, the first item would be to have a process in place for staff to be able to document attendance. And so we would fine tune those details, but just generally, we would ask the board to include that as part of the guidance. In addition, our recommendation is that you can only earn CPE credit for attending a board meeting once per license cycle. Obviously, with 4 board meetings a year, you have 2 years to get your CPE credit. While we want everyone to attend board meetings as much as they can, we don't want the CPE credit to be earned exclusively from attending board meetings. We also notate that it would be earned based on what's in the regulations, specifically what a contact hour is in the regulations is 50 minutes. We would be looking at that same calculation in terms of someone attending a board meeting. The maximum credit we had put in there is 7 hours of CPE credit. And we framed that off of the only other board that I'm aware of that has a similar guidelines for CPE credit for attending board meetings, our real estate appraiser board. Obviously, our board meetings very rarely would last that long, but it kind of puts an end cap on the event that there was a especially long board meeting. We would also recommend that anyone who's participating in association with a disciplinary matter, they would not be eligible to earn CPE credit. They, of course, have other interest in attending the board meeting and certainly don't want to discourage that, but just didn't see that as quite as aligning with, the attendance as for the purpose of education and earning CPE credit. And then, of course, we would also, put the caveat on it that, we can request documentation in case there's any questions, and that we have the authority to take further action if there were failure to comply with the instructions or if someone misrepresented their attendance at a board meeting. And as part of this, also wanting to make sure that it is fair that, board members, of course, you are kind of required to attend board meetings in your capacity as board members, but also we don't think it would be fair to exclude you from the ability to earn CPE credits. So that was another reason to put some of those caps on there, is to, the once per year, so that, there wouldn't be the perception that, as board members, you automatically get, your CPE hours fulfilled by participating on board meetings. So this is, again, what staff is putting forward should the board want to go forward with kind of officially taking a position on earning CPE credit for attending board meetings.
Thank you. Any comments from members?
Madam Chairman, I'd be more than happy to support this. The other thing is that I would like to figure out what I need to say in here for calling in SMEs for water and wastewater, and also on-site professionals, that time that they would meet the 50 minutes to get the hour's worth of time in reviewing all that material would not be included in this 7 hours. I don't want to, because at that point, when we're reviewing tests and that sort of thing, we're going over the whole gamut of everything that's in our profession. We're not just looking at, a meeting. And it's not just a meeting, you're actually bringing in your expertise to make sure the questions are correct before we put it out there on the street. So I don't know how it needs to be worded, Ms. Lindsay, but I just think that, while we're talking about it, I would prefer to see it already in here, that it's not included in the 7 hours, and that we would give SMEs, whoever we call in to do that credit on the water, wastewater, and on-site side. So that's all I have, Madam Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
And that's a great point. We do currently have a process where we award CPE credit for those who participate in exam reviews under the auspices that you're talking about, laws and regulations and administrative processes. So we've been able to fit those into the regulatory framework in the regulations based on the work that's being done by the committees. So unless the board gave a different direction at some point, those SMEs do earn CPE credit. This, Mr. Ford made me think this would be exclusive to board meetings. So not committee meetings, not any other kind of work group meetings that may be generated as a result of the board's work, but are not specifically board meetings.
Okay, so am I correct then, Mr. Ford, that we have a motion on the table to adopt or?
As far as just for clarity's sake, any member that would come in that day, if we attended the meeting, we would fill out the D4 certification, just like, I provide to anybody that takes my ethic class, that I would put my name, address on the form. D4 would already have it filled out as the instructor, I guess, per se. And that would be there just like my conflict of interest paper. It would be on the desk every time.
Because it would only be earning once per, once per license cycle, then it would only be one time that we would presumably have that documentation. But yes, Mr. Ford, our thought process is that it would essentially be what you would provide as an instructor, that we'll have some iteration of that for people looking to earn CPE credit for attending the board meeting.
Yes, ma'am. That'd be my motion. And get a second. I got one other thing I'd like to say about it.
I'll second it.
The only other thing that I have to say to it is that, just looking at everything that she's provided, I just didn't want to miss anything, give others an opportunity to say, should something else be? Is there anything else we need to add to it?
This is Erica. I was just wondering, I guess, more about the implementation of it. Would somebody have to sign up for this? I'm assuming, this is more when we're in person, but if somebody have to sign up for it, could they print off the sign up sheet or something and bring it in so somebody at the DPOR board meeting could sign off on it there? Just kind of wondering about the implementation.
Sure. And Ms. Duncan, our thought process right now is obviously we're kind of thinking through the specifics of the process, but essentially we would have the forms available when people arrived. We would, have a way to capture, their name, license information, those types of things, and also ensure that we as staff have the logistical coordination to ensure that they're there through the whole meeting in order to make sure we award adequate credit and all of that. So yes, the thought is that we would have it ready for them when they came in. With virtual meetings, should we have to continue having virtual meetings, we are thinking of having some way to let us know in advance. So part of what we're working on is figuring out how to communicate that.
Okay. Yeah, I think this is a great idea. I think it would be great. And I think having it more accessible and not having to sign up or just being able to come in would be very helpful as far as encouraging people to come versus having to sign up and something happens. So yeah, I think this is a great idea.
I was just curious. I understand why a class would only count one per cycle for renewal for getting your credits in. But every meeting's not the same meeting. So, but you're saying that you would only be able to do it once. Well, for me, it would be once every 2 years. But every meeting is not like some other reason other than it's just considered repetitive.
The idea was fairness and also the optics of you all are going to be voting on this matter. You're licensees of the board in many cases. And so it's kind of like not wanting there, to be, a suggestion that, well, it's kind of self-serving, for lack of a better word, to, put a CPE avenue in place that you all are here at every meeting. So are going to have the benefits of it. So it's certainly not, it's just like if someone attends, I've sat in on many of your classes as instructors and have heard different questions and different conversations. It's not to discourage someone from taking education, whether or not it falls into line with the CPE. It's not to discourage anyone from coming to more than one board meeting. It's just trying to, make sure that we, are doing it in a way that's going to be fair to everyone and not isolate any particular group and award them extra credit or not award them credit, for attendance of board meetings.
Madam Chair, if I may add on to that, it's part those optics also. We all know that none of you are serving on the board to be self-serving or to get rich. But for example, when you do serve for an in-person meeting and your mileage is reimbursed, it's to then also be earning, CE credit more than once, would simply open you personally and the agency up to unfair criticism, and it's simply not worth it.
Thank you.
I would also note that as wastewater operator, I wouldn't want all my operators just getting their credits here. I want them to stay up with technologies.
Anyone else?
Call for the question, Madam Chairman.
Yeah, did we have a second?
I think
Yes.
Wayne.
Yeah, I seconded it.
Okay, any further discussion? All right, then we'll call the question by roll call.
James Brockwell.
Aye.
Rosa Cook.
Aye.
Erica Duncan.
Aye.
Jordan Evans.
Aye.
John Ewing.
Aye.
Tom Four.
Aye.
Pam Pruitt.
Aye.
Dwayne Roadcap.
Aye.
Wayne Staples.
Aye.
All right, the motion passes with majority vote. Thank you.
Moving forward with the agenda, we have D4 updates as it relates to the COVID-19 response. Oh, look at that.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm not going to go through all of the waivers that we've talked about in previous meetings. Those are all still in place currently. We do not currently, as far as I'm aware as of this morning anyway, have an end date on the governor's executive order, so those continue on. I do want to mention one in particular, though, the waiver for that extends the validity of license expiration dates. We are working on making sure that we have adequate notice to our licensees, that when that day comes, if you've taken advantage of the waiver, which certainly you can, that is a hard 30 days. So we have been working with our internal IT folks on getting letters out to our licensees who have taken that option to make sure that they are aware when that executive order has an end date, it is 30 days after that. And after that 30 days, there are no further waivers or exceptions or anything like that. And so it's going to be a scramble for staff, certainly, but certainly want to make sure that licensees understand. So if anyone, approaches you, I know many times you all are the boots on the ground of people asking questions about what is the board doing and what is D4 doing. Just make sure they understand that is going to be a hard date once there is an end date on that executive order.
Thank you. Any discussion regarding that? How about some financial statements?
Yes, Madam Chair, as always, we have the board's financial statements there on the agenda just for your informational purposes.
Thank you. Any discussion on the financial statements? Da, 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 da. All right. right, moving on to an update on outreach opportunities.
Yes, Madam Chair, as since the pandemic, our outreach has been different, in many cases less, but we have had opportunities to continue to put information out there about the board and its programs and its work. I have an excerpt from the recent VALRA newsletter. They offered us an opportunity to provide an article, and so we did so and gave some updates and information on the COVID response and all of that from DPOR. In addition, had my first opportunity to actually go somewhere last week. So that was exciting. Was in Harrisonburg for a VALRA education event, and I was impressed. It was, everyone had masks on. It was socially distanced. Madam Chair was there as well, presenting, and and speaking of our regulatory review coming up, we received some good suggestions and ideas, and had some dialogue about maybe some future regulatory amendments, and so it was great to get out again. Also, I recently received an email from Mr. Staples about the upcoming short school. It will be virtual again. But we are excited to attend, and I know I owe you an instructor sheet. We'll be getting that to you. So we do still have things going on. And next month, I believe, is a VALRA seminar in Richmond. So we do plan on participating in that as well. And again, any opportunity that we can participate and provide information, however we can help, we are always willing to do that, obviously being cognizant of the extra safety measures that we are in right now. So those are the things that staff has had in terms of our outreach recently.
Thank you. I got a couple things to say that involve outreach. Trish, a gentleman approached me last week, and he is a journeyman operator. He is in the National Guard and has been deployed. He had questions for me about, during the length of his deployment, how that may affect his journeyman status and his CEU requirement. I told him that I'm a dummy and I have to go ask Trish Lindsay or go read some rules. So I don't know if that's something that has ever come up before.
There actually is a statute specifically in reference to that, that does allow them a kind of toll on their meeting their license requirements while they are deployed. And I can send you that code section and provide some other information, and certainly feel free to send them my way. But yes, there is a provision that would toll that.
Okay. I think the gentleman was leaving this week. I'm not sure, but I did tell him I would, either you or I would get back to them, because he wants to continue on. And, we don't get a whole lot of entrance into people that want to do septic work for a living. So I was quite excited that he wanted to stay. One other thing that involves outreach is that, and Trish, you are aware of this, but a couple of weeks ago, via entering in or starting to consult on a new project of my own personal business, had requested via FOIA through the health department some records for a particular property, and stumbled upon a rather egregious violation of DPOR code, specifically the practice of engineering, which I couldn't even fathom. It was so blatant, and a permit was issued by the health department by a licensed individual. So in my travels, and poor Mr. Gregory in Richmond has taken a beating from me over it. I have done what I needed to do, but in looking at the bigger picture, there is a huge disparity between or discontinuity or disconnect between health department staff, licensed staff, and private sector staff. Some of these guys, and I've talked to some colleagues I have at the health department, they have no idea what the responsibilities of their license are. It completely escapes me. I have a license, and as a licensed practitioner, I need to understand what I'm permitted to do and what I'm prohibited from doing. That's a responsibility of my license. But I've discovered that a lot of your health department EHSs have no freaking idea. And I find it egregious. I also think that I'm either part of the problem or part of the solution. So I have offered to put together a presentation on specifically for a designer perspective, licensure, where it starts and where it ends, and what not to do in between. And specifically, I've offered, Bauer has already kind of approached me about presenting it at their annual conference. I've said something to Trish about it because I want input from DPOR. I certainly don't want to overstep my boundaries. But I also have, one of the health departments that I routinely deal with has asked me, could you come and talk to our staff about that? There are the DPOR memorandum that through our board that discusses the practice of engineering and what constitutes the practice of engineering. Most EHSs have never seen that. They've never bothered to look. And when I spoke with different health department supervisors and managers, that information may get sent to an upper level party in the health department, but it never gets passed on. So, like I said, that to me, that's an opportunity. It's not a problem, it's an opportunity for solutions. So I fully intend to work on that as an outreach possibility, not only for DPOR as a whole, but I do think that in the bigger perspective, some kind of agreement needs to be made between VDH and DPOR about just communication, because there's no communication about reporting of wrongful acts. There's no complaints made. They just issue a permit. A lot of them over there will issue a permit and say, and I should tell you guys, I also am the chair of the Virginia Department of Health Sewage Handling and Disposal Appeals Board. And some of the appeals information that was presented to us, well, that's not our responsibility. Well, I understand. And I've said it before, VDA
Okay, Pam.
are as
There you go.
violations. Anybody?
You broke up at the end there, Pam, about last 10 seconds.
Oh, sorry. I said I understand that we do not enforce other departments' laws, but I do not understand the lack of communication between the two departments.
You welcome to go ahead, John. I see you got your hand up.
Well, thanks. This goes along with what I was really trying to say earlier. And it all comes down to enforcement. And an analogy was made once at a board meeting that DPOR should be looked at as being like DMV. Well, who's the state police in that analogy? The state police are the ones running around driving in the cars, really enforcing DMV's laws. The entity that's out there that sees the most permits going across the desk is the local VDH health department environmental health specialist, maybe health specialist senior, maybe supervisor, less likely a manager, but usually day to day, day in, it's supervisors and EHSs. And they are misinformed, uninformed, and it's not from a lack of trying. I've spoken at VHOB before and got a lot, and whenever I talked a little bit about DPOR at that one time I spoke, it was a lot of interest, and it's a lot of like, and oh, and people thinking about it differently. It's a different state agency, and I've had experience through family members of a lot of different state agencies, and ranging from DOC to what's now called DWR, and everybody does things differently. there's a lot of assumptions that DPOR is like VDH, and it's not. It's very different. DPOR is statewide, and what statewide says is statewide goes. VDH, district to district, county to county, things are way different. As different as the 3 licenses that are on-site licenses. What Pam represents, what I represent, what James represents are probably more different than wastewater and waterworks. When you put them all together, we get put together all in one kind of like group of on-site. But you guys are lucky in that Pam and I are weird. Well, Pam's weirder than me, but we're weird. We've got multiple licenses. We understand things. I understand James' pain. I feel his pain. I understand Pam's pain of being an AOSC. I am an AOSC. That's the first thing I did. I install, operate, and maintain. Y'all lucky to have Pam and me. I'm just telling you. Trapper was weird too. Trapper had multiple licenses too. And that's not the norm at all. At all. Installers have no clue what puppers do. AOSCs had no clue what everybody else does. And it really is, it's not, we're not holding one license here. We're holding 3 different licenses. And the EHS, it's almost like another license because they are under the umbrella of the state. It's a different thing, and we don't have that on this board at all. At all. So I feel like that's a real problem, and that could help what Pam is talking about. And I move on to the next person.
I know other people have their hands up, but there in my discussions with different health departments, there did appear to me to be a pervasive sense of immunity from DPOR requirements if you're an EHS. And my response to that is, your license is the same as mine, buddy. Your license is the same as mine. It doesn't matter who employs you. Next, I see Mr. Four. He's leaning in.
Yeah, leaning in. Again, from a standpoint of you got brought on to this board because there were problems with septic systems throughout the Commonwealth of Virginia. You got added because we had a problem in the Commonwealth. Well, anytime you add something, you're going to work through the birthing pain until we get to the fullness of where we ought to be, where VDH is not communicating well with DPOR. DPOR is not communicating well with DQ. That's why we're all here, okay? I mean, EPA has called me in to go teach my class on ethics that goes through on site. And I specifically speak on the DPOR side to everything that you all are supposed to know under your licensure. Mm-hmm. And while I do, the first thing they want to tell me is about everybody else that ain't doing something right, but yet they don't know what's required of them by DPOR regulations. And I tell them right then, stop talking about everybody else. Let me ask you this. Did you know? And of all the respondents in OS, on-site professionals, in my classes, they don't know the regs that are in DPOR. Mm-hmm. So that's why I'm out there. And to be honest with you, to this day, I have charged nothing other than mileage reimbursement to go to these specific, people that have been fined by EPA, not Virginia, by EPA. So they'll keep doing it, and sooner or later, they're going to get caught, because if they don't get caught locally, EPA is going to finally eventually get them, because it's going to be again, all these regs are tied to EPA law, and they're eventually going to get caught. And I appreciate what you're saying over and over and over again, but until we educate them, mm-hmm. That's where our problem is. That there's a lack of knowledge out there. And then, yes, you do have the fly-by-nights that are out there going to take that money. We're always going to deal with them. I wish everybody were just as good as me all the time, but they're not. And we're just going to have to deal with it. and continue to educate and to continue to push forward with what we're doing. And we're going to get to the point that on-site is going to be just as, we had problems with water and wastewater back in 1980. We had problems. We had to work them out. But we've been at it for 40 years plus now. I know Mr. Staples knows a lot about that and saw a lot of the problems and growing pains that we went through on that way before I got involved in it. He was already involved in it. And we're going to get through it. But I agree, Pam, it's not just Pam that needs to be out there educating it. It's a lot more folks that need to be out there educating it. And specifically, I know my guys locally on the VDH side locally, and they know what the regulations are, and they know what is required for journeymen to get their license, and they specifically speak to those that are caught out there that do not have a license, and they're told, hey, look, in order for you to do this, you got to be licensed. And so I've seen them out there working with licensed operators, and now they're getting their journeyman's card. And so I see a change occurring.
That's good.
So that's my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Dwayne, did you have a comment? Oh, it looks like your hand's up.
Yeah, I can never tell if my hand's up or down. I'll just say that I went over to the Virginia Department of Health's policy and guidance list, and they've got a policy on verifying licensure that comes from 2010. So that tells me that nothing's changed since I used to work in that area about how the health department verifies licensure. And then, it seems to be a reoccurring theme with the board about concerns with, some of the procedures and processes with the health department. I see no problem in trying to invite Lance Gregory to come over and talk to us and that sort of thing. So I would propose, maybe the board trying to increase opportunities of speaking with Lance Gregory over at the health department.
Thank you. That's a great idea.
I have one small suggestion as far as education goes. I just went to our DPOR website, and maybe if regulations are one of the things that we're looking at that people aren't lacking in, which I would agree on the wastewater side as well, that it's hard for people to know where these are. People usually only go to the site when they're applying for the test. But to maybe have that more front and center, have a link saying here's regulations or FAQs about what you can and can't do. If you get in trouble, you need to report. If you move, you need to report it. Because I know that there's some people who don't know all of those parts of the regulations. But yeah, just drilling down to our website, it is under a couple different tabs. And so maybe just pulling that out might be a little bit more operator friendly, as we say. So
thank you. Mr. Staples had his hand up next.
Yeah, I just a comment along with Dwayne's response for the VDH side. I'll give you the DEQ side of things. We do have the first line of defense for the wastewater side in DEQ is the inspectors in the regional offices, and a part of their inspection regime is to look for those licenses that operators have at a facility. And as far as misconduct goes, we have a procedure in place. It's called a guidance document on what to do if they suspect some kind of operator misconduct. Used to come to me directly. Once I came on the board, I gave that up to Jason, my coworker, and so now things go through him. And I've told him, don't tell me anything about it, because if you tell me about it, I can't even vote on it. I have to recuse myself. So that was the intent of putting that guidance document in place, was to ensure that whoever was representing DEQ on the board would be able to adjudicate as necessary. And I'll leave it to whoever's next.
Mr. Ford, did you have something else to say?
No, ma'am.
Thank you. Anybody else? Well, thank you for letting me speak on my soapbox item. Like I said, I'm either part of the solution or part of the problem. I intend to be part of the solution. With that, we're going to move forward to consideration of the 2022 meeting dates.
Madam Chair, these are the tentative dates put together for next year based on our dates this year. So if the board is agreeable with those dates, we would need a vote from the board.
So moved, Madam Chairman.
We have a motion on the floor to approve the dates.
Second.
And we have a second. Any discussion on the matter? Roll call vote, please.
All right, James Brockwell.
Aye.
Rosa Cook.
Aye.
Erica Duncan.
Aye.
Jordan Evans.
Aye.
John Ewing.
Aye.
Tom Four.
I was amazed that Rosa's still awake.
Pam Pruitt.
Yes.
Dwayne Roadcap.
Aye.
Wayne Staples.
Aye.
And the motion passes with a majority vote. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. See, I'm good, Tom. I don't have to drive back 6 hours today, so I am great.
So other business, Ms. Lindsay.
Yes, I do have one item for other business that I bring up somewhat reluctantly. It's been discussed before, but I did want to bring it back just because there are some more discussions about it just actually in the last couple of days, and want to make sure that if this is something we need to revisit, that I can prepare to do so. There's a regulation under the operator regulations that requires for systems that exceed 10,000 gallons per day that an alternative on-site sewage system operator and wastewater operator work on that system. Now, when I say and, that one person has to have both based on guidance that was provided in January of 2019. As this issue has come up a couple of times, but most recently, I pulled a list of folks who have both licenses. And so in going through those who have it, we have in the state 38 that hold both licenses, and of those 38, one of those licenses is expired but is renewable. So that's why I'm including them in the overall count. And I guess the discussion that has come to me is the difficulty in finding someone who possesses those, certainly on a statewide perspective. And so I didn't know if this was something that the board needed or wanted to revisit, or if there was additional information that would facilitate a discussion if the board did want to do so, because again, it was discussed in 2019, and the consensus of the board at that time was that one individual had to hold both licenses.
Mr. Staples, did you have something?
Not really, because I agree with the concept. I think if it's that large a facility, just having the alternative license may not be enough. You need to be aware of the responsibilities of not only on-site aspects, but possible discharge aspects.
Thank you. Well said. Mr. Four? Hello, I can't hear you.
Sorry about that.
That's okay.
When we, operate in water and wastewater treatment facilities, while we've got SOPs that are used for folks that do not have a proper license level to actually operate the plant. And so anything which requires operations where changes are made, they have to call the higher level licensed operator or speak to them before they can make a change. Well, just looking at this, Mr. Saunders asked the board for guidance on this. And his question is, I see Mr. Saunders asked the board to consider whether a licensed alternative on-site sewage system operator who partners with the Class 4 or higher wastewater works operator to operate an alternative on-site sewer system exceeds 10,000 gallons per day would meet the licensing requirement. In my world, and I think I spoke to this before, I may be wrong, I have no problem with an alternative signing off on work that he's doing and the Class 4 signing off on work that they're doing, that they partner together to operate this facilities. I got two brains working instead of one that may have both licenses. So I really don't have a problem with as long as we've got both licenses there, whether one person has it or two people have it, makes no difference to me personally. Again, I have Class 3 folks that are operating a Class 2 facility, but they're not operating. They are here doing standard stuff. It has to happen and they know how to do it. But when they have to make a chemical change and they begin to do the operation part of it, they look to the Class 2 or they look to the Class 1. They ask, can I do this? And the Class 1, yep, I'm signing off on your work. So, it's already going on. So anyways, that's just my 2 cents worth.
Thank you. I see Mr. Ewing has his hand up.
Yeah, I just have a real life current situation come across. It's a mass drain field system, and it's designed, the mass drain field it's really good soil, and it's drip dispersal, but every house on the system has conventional treatment. So it's a drip system, mass drain field. Every individual house, individual property on their house has sort of a traditional septic tank, pump tank set up there for them. And then remotely, the drip field is located elsewhere and it's set up for 30,000 gallons per day. Well, by regulations, I understand, all that system is one system, but each house is permitted for, like the most current one permit I got for one of the house construction says 600 gallons per day for that house. So it makes it complex or overly hard to deal with, in that everything they have at their house should be all a conventional operator could take care of, not even an alternative operator. But because it's attached to a 30,000 gallons a day drip system, it's been working for a long time, but no one has been officially operating any of it. So the reality of this is, this kind of person we're talking about, who has this one person who has the 2 license, it's kind of like an albino deer. There are a few out there, and we see them, and they stand out like sore thumb because there's just so few of them. But there's not a lot of them, and they can't go everywhere. So it makes it difficult that it's a one person thing. This is a real life scenario. This is happening. I can show you the plans for it. And yes, could just any AOSE alternative AOSE operate this 30,000 gallons? Probably not. I like to think I could, but as I am, I know I can't touch the drip part, but taking care of the tanks and the pump for the 600 gallon per day permit, that's totally within my license, I feel, because, it's all conventional. I need to be working with an operator who's taking care of the drip, though, and that's still hard to find somebody that will do that, because it's not something that's full-time. It would be like a part-time thing, but it's still hard. It's enough work that it's tough to do part-time. So it's quite the black hole of what we're talking about.
Mr. Brockwell's got his hand up.
Thank you. I just have a question. Maybe I missed this in the beginning. Are we discussing this because we're having complaints that 38 are not enough? Is that why we're discussing this?
That is in part. I pulled that as kind of additional background for the discussion. I guess the genesis is more along the lines of what Mr. Four mentioned, whether or not it needs to be a single person who has both credentials, or can it be accomplished through two people who have each of those credentials working in consultation with one another. If the board were to proceed with the latter, that it could be two people, my recommendation would be let us bring back a guidance document for the board to consider at the next meeting. So that's kind of where we are. But yes, it does involve just the limited number in the state.
So the question came up, can we go to two people or one person, or is it not a complaint that that's not enough? Or is it together?
It's kind of all together. It's been in different ways it's come to me. And so the latest one dealt with the limited number in the state.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Four, I can't hear you. Your mic is off.
Thank you. Again, I just want to let John know that I've got a Class 2 wastewater license. He needs help, give me a call.
There you go.
The other thing is that beyond me, there are a pile of wastewater operators throughout the Commonwealth that I know not only take care of the actual treatment facility they work at full time, they're also doing a multiple small package plants, in small communities before it gets taken off and put onto a larger system. It's basically the first alternative systems that were out there were these small package plants for little subdivisions that treat 25 and 30,000 gallons a day. So they already know what they're doing. And then again, there are a multitude of operators, wastewater operators out there, but in my world, Ms. Lindsay, I just think we need to have the verbiage in there. I'm in favor of it. Again, I don't need to be here when an operator has a problem at the water plant. And again, we're going to have a Class 2 operator run this plant. But there are always going to be those times that I have to call Mr. Roadcap. I got 8 operators at the water plant, and all 8 of them have come down with COVID. Sir, can I run this plant by myself? Well, I've got 41 years of experience, and he tells me, no, the regulations say you got to have 2 people up there. Well, I have to call the town manager to get him to come sit down here while I run the plant with the town manager sitting in the chair. But that's one person has to be here at this plant. It's where the regulations are written. That's why I served on the committee to kind of change that. I don't need 2 people to help me run this plant. I know how to run this plant. But I'm willing to see the change made to allow 2 people to work together to make it happen, as long as the Class 4 is met and the alternative professional is met. I'm happy with it. That's all I have, Madam Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Roadcap. I see you got your hand up.
Thanks. So I was leaning towards what Tom said at the end, that I would be willing to support the 2-person concept. I was going to Trish, as far as the policy. So I come from a different regulatory background where we have this concept of variances and exceptions to the rule, and that you can petition the agency for an exception or a variance to the rule. I don't know that the regulatory boards fall into that same kind of concept. And you had mentioned that there could be some guidance written about this. If people are really pushed on, those 39 people are the ones that really need to be doing this and nobody else can do it, then I think it would be appropriate for the board to consider hardship kinds of conditions where it is really difficult, if not impossible, to meet the regulatory expectation. And so I'll just throw that out, that I kind of lean towards what Tom's thinking toward the end, and absent that, having some way of the board being able to evaluate exceptions under hardship, extreme kinds of cases, if that were possible to do.
Mr. Four, turn your mic on. Thank you.
When VDH allows the variance, if there is a requirement or there is a complaint against what's occurring in that community goes before DPOR at that point in time. The way the statutes are written currently, VDH has that ability to allow the variance. And so DPOR is going to ask the question, have you provided a variance to your regulation? And if VDH has allowed that, then DPOR really has no ability to take action because the health department has given a variance. And normally it's going to be because of an emergency situation, very much like COVID. If I lose employees because of COVID, we've got to operate this plant. There's folks out there that got to have water. Well, VDH has the ability to give variances. And again, if a complaint comes in during that period of time, the statute, the way that it's written, says that VDH has that ability, and DPOR has no regulatory authority over VDH during those situations. But DPOR may ask the question, did you all provide a variance? And that conversation then begins between management of VDH and DPOR. So I just leave it at that. I've seen it happen once in my career in 41 years, and nothing, it was about an emergency situation during a hurricane. And so I've seen it happen before, and I'm sure it'll happen again, but hopefully the way the statute's wrote, nobody's going to get in trouble.
Thank you. Mr. Ewing.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I guess it's a question for the wastewater works people on how, based on some limited knowledge of your license and how you figure out which license you need for said plant. Well, I understand that there's some DEQ sort of ranking or designation that guides you toward which license you need. Is it just strictly gallons per day, or is it complexity? I'm looking at this drip system and wondering.
It's a combination. There's the sewage collection and treatment regs are where we get the designations, where the regional permit writers will look at the regulations. They'll look at the plans and specs for the facility, the permitted flow, and then based on that and the type of treatment, they'll come up with a license type, and that will actually be put into their permit. It'll specify that this facility must hire or must utilize a class 4, 3, 2, or 1 wastewater operator. And I believe Trish can correct me if I'm wrong here, that DPOR, we actually take our classifications from those classifications at DEQ.
That is correct, Mr. Stables. We're always pretty much going to follow the direction of DEQ and VDH respectively on how we would approach it.
So my example of my 30,000 gallon system has nothing to do with DEQ. It wouldn't have any designation. Does that become a problem for wastewater to figure out, or what kind of license you need there, or?
If it doesn't come into contact with DEQ, I think the DPOR reg then takes effect, where it says you must have both the alternative license and a class 4.
Class 4, right? Okay.
Yeah, and typically anything less than 40,000 gallons per day, unless it's a very complex facility, is either not going to have a license requirement at all, or at the bare minimum class 4.
Because I feel, well, with the future of all this, we're going to see a lot more of this, because it can be more lucrative to sell properties and have more properties together. And frankly, it's easier to operate systems all in one place. Wastewater operators, you all have one place. I have to go through several counties. If I'm going to one place and I'm knocking out, a whole bunch of sites in one place, that's a lot easier to maintain. It's safer overall. And as we do these more and more often, become more familiar with it, it's a matter of gallons and kind of the same controls and same kind of system you're dealing with. This is an American drip system, and it has larger tanks and everything, and it has simple conventional treatment. Gallons per day should obviously fall into some kind of equation, but I don't necessarily think, as with DEQ figures things out, if I understand right, it's not necessarily the end all of everything of deciding what kind of license needs to be in control. So
there's a lot of considerations, and
right.
In this particular situation, it's likely, and I'm not sure where the cutoff is as far as whether you would need just VDH involved or say a VPA permit. Most often we talk about Virginia Pollutant Discharge Elimination System permits and the requirements for operating for discharging facilities. But there's another type of permit out there for facilities that don't discharge. And that's the Virginia Pollutant Abatement Permit, which is for those facilities that don't discharge but do have a treatment option. And that might
this
be
is
where
a existing system. There's 20-something houses already on it, and I don't think they had. All I got was the only thing they went through, I think, was VDH.
And like I say, I don't know what the cutoff is where they would be required to go to DEQ as well, or instead. I'm not sure of which side that goes with.
Thank you. I know Mary's been patiently waiting.
I'm rarely patient.
But you look patient.
Following up just briefly on Mr. Roadhop and Mr. Four, in the event of an emergency such as COVID or some other shorter, God willing, emergency, generally the executive order provides the agency head with authority to waive regulatory requirements, as you all are familiar with now because we have so many waivers. And so this is a regulation, and there would be no need for any other formal, variance if the board determined or advised staff that a sort of waiver or adjustment to this regulatory requirement temporarily to allow for 2 people rather than the 1 was necessary for public safety in the event of a shortage. That would presumably be an available option.
Thank you. Mr. Brockwell.
I can, maybe we don't need to concern ourselves. Maybe this is between a contractual agreement between the 2 operators, if there are 2. Somebody needs to be ultimately responsible. I'm just bringing that up. I could just situation where 2 guys point fingers at each other. Well, this guy's supposed to do that and he's supposed to do that. Or should we just not even worry about that and leave that between them 2 and leave them both ultimately responsible for any operation or any problems?
Me to you, I think they'd both be responsible. I don't think we can
determine one to be responsible ultimately, like a master and a journeyman type thing, or no?
No. If you have 2 licensed if you have a licensed on-site operator and a licensed wastewater operator, I think that becomes an issue between the 2 of them. It may become a civil issue, but I don't think we can segregate that out at this time.
Okay.
I
think that might have been one of the rationales for having that part of the regulation state that no individual can operate this type of facility without holding both the alternative license and a wastewater license. There you've got one person who is in responsible charge.
Good point.
And that's all of the VP DES permits actually state that there's only one licensed operator required at each facility. And they must be at that level that's specified in the permit.
Okay. Mr. Forey, I know you had something.
Yeah, I just, again, go back to earlier comments by Mr. Staples when he spoke of wastewater treatment classifications and how they came about. And I can tell you just by personal knowledge that you mess up and they'll change that classification on that facility. It ain't got nothing to do with flow, volume, or anything else. If they say it's going to be a class 1 facility, they want a class 1 operator there. I've seen it happen. So you let this system that you're talking about fail, you know, there may be changes on the DEQ regs that takes it from 40,000 gallons down to 30,000 to cover this drip system that you're talking about. If the right person talks to the right legislator and it goes through, and we got a new law on our hand, he'll give you a classification of what kind of operator you need there. In my world, whether I got a class 1 operator or an alternative person working on the same site, if either one of them are not, and they're failing to do their job, both of them are liable if a complaint comes in and we get to hear the case. So if they mess up, it's both of them. We'll hear the case and we'll fine them. We'll do whatever we're supposed to do. But ultimately, in my world, you know, the highest level license, the OIC in charge, they're the ones that are going to wind up coming in here if they had anything to do with it. So I just, again, I'm helping folks around the Commonwealth with my license. Every time I communicate with somebody, if I give them bad information and they make a complaint to DPOR, I could be liable because when I speak, people are listening and I can be held, you know, if they choose to do, well, Mr. Forrest said, it's my license. And the regs state that. I got to be very careful how I communicate with the operations of facilities throughout the Commonwealth. So in this instance, you know, my mind keeps saying to me, 2 heads are better than one. And if they mess up, they can be fined. Thank you.
Thank you. So after all this discussion, it seems that if we wish to change something, then a motion needs to be put forward to the board. Am I correct, Ms. Lindsay?
Yes, Madam Chair, I would say if the board does want to pursue changing this, that it would be through a guidance document in order to ensure that it's being applied consistently. We can certainly draft that and bring it back to the board for consideration at the next board meeting if this was something that the board wanted to proceed with right of way. If you wanted to get the motion down, and then we would craft the guidance document, which would then be put out for public comment. So in terms of the next procedural step, that's up to the board should it wish to move forward.
Okay, does anyone have a motion then that they wish to put forward?
I'll make a motion that that DPOR present something to the board to help problem solve what Trish has been dealing with. You know, so that'll be the motion that I'll put forward, and then we can consider it later.
So we have a motion on the floor then for the DPOR administration to put forward something to the board to help with this problem. Do we have a second on the matter?
I'll second it.
We have a second. Is there any discussion? All right, via roll call, we'll take a vote.
James Brockwell.
Aye.
Rosa Cook.
Aye.
Erica Duncan.
Aye.
Jordan Evans.
Aye.
John Ewing.
Aye.
Tom Four.
Aye.
Pam Pruitt.
Aye.
Dwayne Roadcap.
Aye.
Wayne Staples.
Aye.
The motion passes with a majority vote. Thank you so much for that discussion. That was very helpful. Very good then. With no objection, we'll move on to announce that our future meeting date is July 8, 2021. Any ideas on how the meeting may be conducted, Ms. Trish? So as of right now, my goal is to transition to in-person meetings for my boards that I handle. Right now, I've got planned out through June that will be virtual. So the next meeting after that
the WOOSSP board meeting in July. So we're tentatively planning for an in-person meeting. Obviously, that will be directed by events as they evolve over the next couple of months. So that would be my goal. And also, just so that didn't miss this under other business, Caleb Taylor did get in touch with us. He was in the field and was having technical difficulties accessing the meeting, but he wanted to make sure that I conveyed to you all he intended to be here, he planned to be here, and so he apologized for not being able to make it.
Thank you. We'll assign him tasks later on.
Any committees? He's the one.
All of them. Okay.
Yeah. Pam.
Sir.
I meant to say something under other business, just to reiterate what Trish had indicated earlier, that Virginia Tech Short School is going to be virtual again this year. They're going with an abundance of caution still. I'm expecting that we won't have a whole lot of changes. And the live courses that we had, or the live sessions we had last year, will be live again this year. Tom and Trish, that you're up on a couple of days there, but we still have the recordings from recorded sessions last year, and I suspect that those are going to be utilized again this year with no changes. So get the word out to go on VT's website and check it out.
Thank you. Mr. Roadcap, did you have something you wanted to add?
Yeah, thank you, Pam. I'm sorry. In the other business category, I thought I would let everyone know that the Waterworks regulations were approved by the governor, and they'll be posted on the registrar's website in a few weeks, and I expect them to take effect toward the end of June. So they should be posted by May the 25th or 28th, somewhere around in there, and then be effective the end of June.
And Mr. Four is jumping for joy. Thank you. Anybody else have anything? Remember to complete your conflict of interest forms.
How do we do that?
Trish knows.
I digitally signed mine, Wayne, with Adobe.
Okay, well, we don't have access to that at DEQ.
So
I'm just going to scan it and email it back.
Tanya may be able to tell you. She's the queen.
Will that work, Tanya?
That will work, but if it's easier for you, I can send your COIA in PDF form and then a request for signature. And it won't exactly look like your signature, but it will be electronically signed, and then you can just email it back to me. If that's easier for anybody to do it that way, I'm happy to do it.
Yeah, do it that way for me at least.
Okay.
I'm kind of spotty with what my scanner will do here.
Okay.
at home.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, the governor doesn't want me coming downtown just yet. I'm still in that category of too damn old right there.
Trish, I will say that I hope that if we do in person, that you give me an option maybe to do virtual. Because I'm loving this, not having to do 6 hours for a 3-hour meeting.
I definitely understand. I'll have to see what we might be able to do. I'll have to look at the latest parameters for virtual meetings and all of that.
Tanya, if you would send that to me as well, so I can email it back to you, that would be awesome.
Will do.
Hey, Trisha. Trisha, this is Shannon. Hey, I know you want to hurry up and end your meeting, and of course I will be the one that would hold you up. You're welcome. You're welcome. But I just want to let you know that I did get a response while I was in the meeting. I did send a message to ABC regarding the ability to be able to reschedule if you did not pass. The program is allowed to is set up to allow candidates to schedule their retest online. However, it was discovered today that this may be a more widespread issue with PSI scheduling system not recognizing repeat testers, as they have had this concern with other clients as well. So it's not just Virginia. PSI is investigating this with their tech and development teams and will address the issue as soon as possible, and I'll be kept up to date with this. And of course, I will let Trisha know. Also, I did update the website to include the Salisbury and the Johnson City locations. What I was doing was looking for Virginia and didn't realize that I know that, but now I realize that the Johnson City and the Salisbury didn't show up. So on the DPOR website has been updated to include those two sites, but we are still working on that. And then also, Ms. Cook, I will do another follow-up today on getting your test site done with the recognizing your location as a test site.
Thank you so much, Shannon.
You're welcome.
I told y'all Shannon is on it. So
Thank you. We're going to move on. Do we have any further motions?
No, but Tanya, could you send that to me too? The PDF, the fillable PDF.
I will do it.
A motion to adjourn, Madam Chairman.
There we have it.
Second.
And we had a second. I'm pretty sure everybody's going to say aye.
and this one we could go under the chair. We can adjourn.
Thank you all.
Have a good
Thank you.
Thank y'all so much.
See
you.
you
Bye,
later.
everybody.
Tom and Trish, I'll be in touch with you about short school.
All right, my best co-presenter.
Tom, I'm going to try to give you a call about that system.
Sounds good. Thank y'all.